Ever wondered why this tiny island nation of Singapore that once struggled for survival now stands as one of the world's richest countries? Join us as we unravel the financial marvel that Singapore has become thanks to visionary leaders like Kuan Yew. Is Singapore a good place to work? Let's delve into the finances of Singapore and discover why Singapore is one of the richest countries in the world. Singapore is a small island nation just off the tip of Malaysia. You might be surprised to know that Singapore is slightly smaller than New York City, but is home to 5.6 million people. Despite its small size and modest resources, Singapore boasts an impressive economic output of almost $500 billion, making it the 33rd largest economy in the world. It outshines larger countries like the UAE, Vietnam, and even Malaysia itself, which has more land, more manpower, and more natural resources. But Singapore's journey to success was far from easy. Just 5 decades ago, it was a desperately poor nation, scarred by a long history of occupation. The remarkable success of this tiny island has captured the attention of economists and commentators worldwide. Many dream of their own countries becoming the Singapore of their regions, but achieving such success isn't as simple as it may seem. Let's start with the unusual beginnings of Singapore as an independent nation. Unlike many countries that had to fight for their independence, Singapore's independence was somewhat forced upon it. It was once part of Malaysia and served as a vital trade port for colonial empires. This diversity led to tension among the various groups living on the island. In the aftermath of World War II and Japanese occupation, Singapore had to be rebuilt almost from scratch. For decades, it resembled a city-sized slum, with most residents living in poverty. Recognizing the potential for conflict in such a diverse and challenging environment, Singapore was separated from Malaysia in 1965. One of Singapore's first strengths was its unique form of benign authoritarianism. The new government understood that to address the country's problems, it needed strong, decisive leadership. The government took bold steps, including reclaiming land from private ownership at below market rates to build affordable public housing. This detail is often overlooked when people suggest that their countries should follow Singapore's model. Housing in Singapore is highly controlled to this day, with a blend of central planning and free market mechanics. Income taxes are famously low. The top rate is 24%, but that only applies to those earning over 1 million Singaporean dollars per year. At the same time, 20% of workers' salaries are mandatorily set aside for a communal investment fund. Employers contribute an additional 16%, which goes towards retirement and health care. This means that, at a minimum, Singaporeans are saving at least 36% of their income, double the average savings rate in the USA. Many mistakenly believe that Singapore's success revolves around glamorous industries and glass skyscrapers, thanks to images of Marina Bay and stories of billionaires. But the reality is quite different, and even most economists miss the true essence of Singapore's success. Singapore's success was a product of multiple unique ingredients. Its government's strong, centralized control, along with careful planning and management, played a pivotal role in shaping the nation's trajectory. The Singaporean government's approach to housing and taxation is a remarkable balancing act. On the one hand, they allow for minimal government intervention in income taxes, promoting a free market environment. On the other hand, they enforce mandatory savings and investment contributions to provide affordable housing, retirement benefits, and health care for their citizens. While Singapore's model is intriguing, it's important to recognize that replicating its success elsewhere is an exceedingly challenging task. The unique combination of factors that propelled Singapore to its current status simply doesn't exist in the same way in other parts of the world. One of Singapore's greatest global advantages is its exceptional geographic location at the tip of the Malacca Straits, which happens to be the busiest shipping lane in the world. This strategic location, a historical trade port, has now become a vital asset for Singapore's economy. Interestingly, one of Singapore's most significant industries today is far from the glitz and glamour of global finance. It serves as a sort of gas station for the world's cargo ships. As Asia became a hub for low-cost manufacturing and international trade intensified, Singapore capitalized on its position. It set up major oil facilities to import oil from the South Pacific and the Persian Gulf and sell it to the ships passing through the Malacca Straits. Due to its prime location, and the constant flow of crude oil freighters, Singapore is home to the world's largest bunkering port, offering prices even lower than the Gulf states themselves. While Singapore does produce some oil, it's a tiny fraction compared to the vast volume that passes through the country. To enhance its role as a one-stop shop for shipping needs, Singapore developed the region's largest commodities exchange. Here, companies and speculators can secure prices for resources traded all over Asia. Once again, Singapore's unique blend of authority and capitalism played a pivotal role in making this industry thrive. The capital investment required for the oil industry was massive, and Singapore, an impoverished nation in the mid-1970s, needed to attract multinational oil companies to set up operations. In return, these companies would share their profits with Singapore in the future. So what made Singapore an attractive destination for international companies in the oil industry? It wasn't just its geographic position. Economists argue that it was the freedoms granted to foreign companies and the security provided by an effectively one-party state that guaranteed policy consistency. Additionally, Singapore adopted an English common law legal system from its previous colonizers, a system well regarded and widely understood in the business world. This legal framework made Singapore an attractive destination for international companies for commercial disputes. In essence, Singapore's success was founded on being in the right place at the right time and having the right authority to strike favorable deals. While Singapore did capitalize on its early success by reinvesting in its people and industries, it's important to recognize that if it were located anywhere else in the world, it might not have achieved the same remarkable status. Another common misconception is assuming that with the right policies, other countries can follow in the footsteps of Singapore. However, most of the time, people are learning the wrong lessons. Singapore is often touted as a model for what can happen when taxes and business restrictions are low. The idea is that companies set up operations there, contributing to the economy in various ways, but the reality is different. Singapore does have taxes, and they aren't exceptionally low. Corporate tax rates at 17% are average compared to countries worldwide. Individuals can find places with zero income taxes, not to mention other taxes such as property taxes and the high costs of owning a car. The average person and the average company operating in Singapore end up paying roughly the same amount to the government as they would in most other advanced economies, just in different ways. The government revenue in Singapore accounts for approximately 18% of GDP, which is similar to the USA. Singapore is physically tiny, which has its perks. When you're small, things like infrastructure and services become much more manageable and cost-effective. Instead of servicing an entire country, they only need to cater to one mid-sized city. This efficiency allows the government to provide services more effectively and at a lower cost. However, it's worth noting that the government might sometimes take more than its fair share of services. Here's an interesting quirk. About 10% of Singapore's workforce commutes from Malaysia every day. Despite its close proximity to the much larger neighboring country, these workers contribute to Singapore's economic output without being counted in its population. When economists calculate GDP per capita figures, they include the output of these cross-border workers in the numerator, but don't add them to the denominator. This unique situation can give Singapore an unfair advantage when compared to regular economies that lack this daily cross-border workforce. It's important to dispel the myth that slashing taxes was the key to Singapore's success. Instead, it's the combination of various factors we've explored in this video that played a pivotal role in its prosperity. If a country finds itself gaining independence in a region that rapidly becomes the center of global trade, and if that country empowers a government capable of making decisive decisions without abusing its power for personal gain, and if there are no better alternatives available until world-leading industries are established, then yes, that country could potentially become the Singapore of its region. However, it's essential to acknowledge that this path is filled with ifs. Achieving the level of success seen in Singapore isn't a straightforward formula that can be easily replicated. While it may be tempting to aspire to become an economy as prosperous as Singapore, it's essential to look at better examples and approaches that will likely yield better results for the many countries around the world currently going through their own periods of rapid development. Singapore isn't the only country making strides in the sphere of the global economy. Click the video on screen now to find out how the Netherlands is secretly becoming one of the richest countries in the world.